The Cold War was a time of rapidly advancing military technology. Riding the military technology boom of World War II, the coming decades would push technology to its limits, spawning countless attempts at creating the next great piece of military equipment. From gargantuan aircraft carrier killing flying boats to tanks built to survive a nuclear bomb, here is the list of failed Soviet military projects. Number 10, Lun-class Ekranoplan. The Lun-class Ekranoplan is a ground effect vehicle designed by Rostislav Alexeyev in 1975 and used by the Soviet and Russian navies from 1987 until sometime in the late 1990s. Flying boats are nothing new, with the type having been in use since its origin in 1910. But the Ekranoplan was a radical design that would have redefined what a flying boat was. Using a cushion of air on top of the water, these monsters used the ground effect to fly at low altitude across bodies of water, with the intended goal of intercepting incoming aircraft carriers, using its Moskit missiles to send them to the depths. Number 9, Yak-36 Freehand. While the Ekranoplan failed to revolutionize flying boats, in 1956, the Yak-36 attempted to revolutionize fighter jets, adding vertical takeoff and landing capabilities. In reality, it failed and paved the way for several more failed attempts, none of which saw full production. One particularly terrifying quirk of the Yak-36 was that if one of the two jet engines stalled while hovering, the entire aircraft would immediately flip over and crash. The technology was just too far into the future to become a reality in the 50s. Number 8, Kalinin K-7. The Kalinin K-7 was a heavy experimental aircraft, designed and tested in the Soviet Union in the early 1930s. It was of unusual configuration, with twin booms and large underwing pods housing fixed landing gear and machine gun turrets. In the passenger version, seats were arranged inside the 2.3-meter thick wings. The airframe was welded from KHMA chrome molybdenum steel. The original design called for 6 engines in the wing leading edge, but when the projected loaded weight was exceeded, 2 more engines were added to the trailing edges of the wing, one right and one left of the central passenger pod. Nemesek states in his book that at first only one further pusher engine was added. With a wingspan of over 170 feet, it was the biggest airplane in the world at the time and could act as a troop transport and heavy bomber. Unfortunately, it was just too advanced, with too many problems for the technology of the day. The program ended when the Sukhoi K-7 built crashed during testing. Number 7, Object 279. Object 279 Khotan was a Soviet experimental heavy tank developed at the end of 1959. This special-purpose tank was intended to fight on cross-country terrain, inaccessible to conventional tanks, acting as a heavy breakthrough tank, and the tank was designed to take a hit from a nuclear bomb and survive. What it didn't survive was the program costs it incurred, being cancelled after only one Object 279 was produced. It was planned as a tank of the Supreme Command Reserve. Number 6, Bartini VVA-14. The Bartini VVA-14, vertical takeoff amphibious aircraft, was a wing and ground effect aircraft developed in the Soviet Union during the early 1970s. Designed to be able to take off from the water and fly at high speed over long distances, it was to make true flights at high altitude, but also have the capability of flying efficiently just above the sea surface, using aerodynamic ground effect. The VVA-14 was designed by Italian-born designer Robert Bartini in answer to a perceived requirement to destroy United States Navy Polaris missile submarines. The 3 prototypes were made and scrapped after the program's cancellation. Number 5, Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-105. The Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-105, part of the Spiral program, was a crewed test vehicle to explore low-speed handling and landing. It was a visible result of a Soviet project to create an orbital spaceplane. The MiG-105 was nicknamed Lepot, or bast shoe for the shape of its nose. The jet was meant to be launched like a missile from a high-altitude Tu-95 bomber. A combination of jet and rocket engines would then carry it into orbit. Numerous tests were conducted in the atmosphere, with the eighth and final test resulting in a hard landing that threw it off the space plane. In the end, the MiG-105 never made it into space, instead being cancelled in favor of the Brunner space shuttle. Number 4. Ilyushin Il-40 Brawny. During World War II, the Ilyushin Il-2 made a legend of itself as a durable and powerful ground attack aircraft. On the outset of the war, with new jet technology gripping the world, it seemed like a natural development to have a jet-powered successor to the famous flying tank. Armed with 6 monstrously powerful 23 cannons, the Il-40 seemed like a great idea, until those cannons started stalling out the engines when fired, leading to the program's cancellation. Number 3, ZVM-2901 Sukhoi. One of the most unique all-terrain vehicles in the world to this day, the ZVM-2901 was built from a U.S. truck as part of a series of screw-propelled vehicles the Soviet Union experimented with. The concept never got off the ground, but they did in fact work as intended. Their ZVM-2901, in particular, sat abandoned until a team of Russian engineers restored it to its former glory for all to see. Number 2, Kamov Ka-22 Vinterkral. The Kamov Ka-22 Vinterkral was a rotorcraft developed by Kamov for the Soviet Air Force. The experimental transport aircraft combined the capabilities of a helicopter for vertical takeoff and landing with those of a fixed-wing aircraft for cruise. The Ka-22 carried a large payload, having a hold comparable in size to the Antonov Un-12. 8 world records for altitude and speed were set by the Ka-22 in its class, none of which have since been broken. Unfortunately, the Ka-22 was just too complex, and after the prototypes crashed during testing, it was abandoned in favor of the more conventional Mi-6 Hawk helicopter. Number 1, Sukhoi T-4 Sotka. Bearing a striking resemblance to the American XB-70 Valkyrie, the Sukhoi T-4 was a failed attempt at matching the American development of a Mach 3 nuclear bomber. The T-4 isn't a straight rip-off though, being shorter, and having a different cockpit design. But just like the XB-70 Valkyrie, it failed, being too hard to fly, and too expensive for the value it gave in return. Fortunately for aviation enthusiasts, the single prototype T-4 remains on display in the Monino Air Museum to this day. If you enjoyed the video, it would be great if you like, share and subscribe to our channel for more amazing and informative